I woke up from brain surgery to find divorce papers on my hospital nightstand. My husband couldn't even wait until I opened my eyes. But what he didn't know was that while I was unconscious, his entire world was about to collapse. 48 hours. That's all it took for him to go from signing papers to sobbing outside my door. And I made sure everyone we knew had front row seats to watch him fall. My name is Sarah Chin and I'm a cardiac surgeon. Or at least I was supposed to be. 3 months before everything fell apart, I'd just finished a 14-hour surgery saving a teenager's life. I remember stripping off my surgical gloves, exhausted but satisfied, when the headache hit like a sledgehammer. It wasn't the first one. For weeks I'd been having these blinding migraines that made my vision blur and my hands shake. I'd been ignoring them like doctors always do with their own health. But that night I collapsed in the locker room and Rebecca found me seizing on the floor. The diagnosis came fast. Benign meningioma brain tumor. The word benign should have been comforting, but when a growth is pressing against your brain, benign just means it won't kill you quickly. The surgery would be delicate. One wrong move and I could lose my motor skills, my memory, my ability to ever hold a scalpel again. My entire identity was wrapped up in being a surgeon. The thought of losing that terrified me more than death itself. Michael, my husband of 12 years, seemed like a rock through it all. He came to every appointment, held my hand during consultations, asked all the right questions. We'd been married since I was 26, and we'd made the choice together not to have children so I could focus on my career. He'd always said he was proud of me, that watching me save lives made him feel like he'd married a superhero. I believed every word. But 2 weeks before the surgery, things started feeling wrong. I'd come home from the hospital and find Michael on the phone in our home office, door closed. When I'd walk in, he'd snap the laptop shut. One night I asked him directly, "Michael, is something going on?" He looked me right in the eyes and said, "Sarah, I'm just stressed about your surgery. I can't lose you." Then he kissed my forehead and held me tight. I felt guilty for even questioning him. Then he started asking questions about our finances. Casual at first. "Hey, where do we keep the investment documents?" Then, "Have you updated your life insurance policy recently? What's the payout?" The questions got more specific. More urgent. One night he sat me down at the kitchen table with a folder full of papers. He said, "Sarah, I know you don't want to think about this, but we should update your will. Just to be safe. Before the surgery." I stared at the papers. Something in my gut twisted. I said, "Michael, the surgery has a 97% success rate. Why are we planning like I'm going to die?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly. 97%. That means 3% don't make it. I just want to protect us. Protect you." The way he said protect made my skin crawl, but I signed the documents anyway. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Everything will be taken care of." I should have heard the threat in those words. A few days later, one of my colleagues pulled me aside in the hospital corridor. She looked uncomfortable. She said, "Sarah, I saw Michael last night at Lombardi's. That upscale Italian place downtown. He was with a young woman. She was sitting very close." My heart dropped into my stomach, but when I confronted Michael, he had the explanation ready. Too ready. That was Amanda from work. Junior associate. We were discussing the Henderson portfolio over dinner. Completely professional, Sarah. Come on, you know me better than that. I wanted to push harder, but I was exhausted from the pre-surgery prep and the constant headaches. I said, "It just looked intimate, Michael." That's what she said. He stepped closer and took my face in his hands. "Sarah, you're about to have brain surgery. You're stressed. You're scared. Your mind is playing tricks on you. I love you. Only you. I would never betray you." And like a fool, I believed him. The night before my surgery, I woke up at 2 in the morning and found his side of the bed empty. I walked downstairs and found him on his laptop, the screen casting blue light across his face. When he heard me, he slammed it shut, but not before I saw the page. Survival rates for meningioma surgery. But he wasn't looking at success rates. The page was titled Complications, Permanent Damage and Mortality Rates. I stood there in my pajamas staring at him. "Michael, what are you doing?" He stood up quickly, too quickly, and pulled me into his arms. "I'm terrified, Sarah. I needed to know what we're really facing. What if you don't wake up? What if you wake up different? I'm preparing myself for the worst." He held me so tight I could barely breathe. Thought it was love. I thought he was protecting his heart from potential loss. I was so incredibly, devastatingly wrong. My surgery was scheduled for 6 in the morning. Michael drove me to the hospital in the dark, his hand on my knee the whole way. But he was quiet. Too quiet. In the pre-op room, as the nurses prepped my fore and shaved part of my head, he stood in the corner checking his phone. I said, "Michael, can you put that away? Please." He looked up startled, then pocketed it. "Sorry. Work emergency." As they were about to wheel me away, he leaned down and kissed my forehead one last time. He whispered, "Goodbye, Sarah. Not see you soon. Not I'll be here when you wake up. Not I love you. Just goodbye." Rebecca was standing nearby in her scrubs. And I saw her eyes narrow. But I was already being wheeled away, the anesthesia pulling me under, thinking about that strange farewell. The surgery took 9 hours. Rebecca told me later that everything went perfectly. No complications, clean margins, tumor removed completely. I was in recovery by 4 in the afternoon, heavily sedated but stable. I have no memory of those first few hours. But apparently at 6 p.m., while I was still unconscious with bandages wrapped around my skull, a process server walked into my hospital room. The nurse on duty, Jennifer, later told me she couldn't believe what she was seeing. A process server in the ICU recovery ward, asking which bed was Sarah Chin. She tried to stop him, but hospital protocol required her to accept legal documents on behalf of an incapacitated patient. So she did, her hands shaking with anger. Divorce papers. Filed that morning at 9 a.m. 3 hours into my surgery. While my skull was literally open on the operating table and Rebecca's hands were inside my brain, Michael was at the courthouse filing for divorce. The grounds cited were irreconcilable differences and abandonment of marital duties due to my work hours. He was requesting immediate separation of assets and had attached an emergency motion to access our joint accounts. But it got so much worse. Michael had cleaned out our joint bank accounts that morning before filing. All of them. $43,000 gone. He left exactly $2,000, the legal minimum, to avoid additional charges. He'd moved out of our house while I was in surgery, hired movers and had the locks changed. The neighbors watched it happen. And inside the envelope with the divorce papers was a handwritten note that Jennifer was too disgusted to read aloud. She just handed it to Rebecca when she came to check on me. Rebecca found the papers when she came to check on me at 7 p.m., still in her surgical scrubs. She told me later that she stood there staring at them for a full minute, unable to process what she was seeing. Then she read the note. Her face went white, then red. She immediately called her husband Tom, who's a lawyer, and started making plans. But first she had to wake me up and tell me. She said that was the hardest thing she'd ever had to do. I came out of sedation around 9 p.m. Everything was fuzzy, like looking through frosted glass. My head was wrapped in bandages and there was a dull, throbbing pain that the medication couldn't quite mask. The first thing I said was, "Where's Michael?" I watched Rebecca's face and I knew. I knew before she said anything. My hope just shattered into 1,000 pieces. She sat on the edge of my hospital bed and held my hand. She said, "Sarah, I need you to stay calm. Your blood pressure needs to stay stable." That's when I knew it was bad. She told me everything. The papers. The timing. The money. Then she handed me the note. I read it with trembling fingers, my vision still blurry from the surgery and now from tears. "You were too busy saving everyone else to notice you couldn't save us. I've moved on. Don't contact me. You're not worth the effort anymore. Good luck with your recovery. You're going to need it." I vomited. Right there in the hospital bed. The emotional shock was so severe that my blood pressure spiked to dangerous levels and set back my recovery. Nurses came running. They had to give me sedatives. But through the fog I heard them whispering in the hallway. "Can you believe he did that? While she was in surgery? What kind of monster?" Everyone knew. Every single person in that hospital knew what Michael had done. That night, alone in my hospital room with machines beeping and my head pounding, something crystallized inside me. The grief was there, yes. The betrayal. But underneath all of that was something cold and sharp. Rage. Pure focused rage. He'd waited until I was at my most vulnerable, unconscious and unable to defend myself to destroy my life. He'd planned this. Every smile. Every tender touch. Every whispered reassurance. It was all theater. The next morning, my lawyer Patricia showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee and a briefcase. She's sharp as a scalpel and twice as effective. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She sat down, opened her laptop and said, "Sarah, we need to talk about what Michael's filing actually says." She showed me the documents. He was claiming I'd abandoned our marriage by prioritizing my career over him. He wanted half of everything, including my equity in my medical practice that I'd built from nothing over 15 years. I was about to respond when Patricia held up her hand. "There's more. He's also contesting your father-in-law's living trust." I stared at her, confused. "What does James's trust have to do with our divorce?" She leaned forward. "That's the interesting part. James's trust is worth $4.2 million. You're named as primary healthcare proxy because James trusted you to make medical decisions. Michael is the financial executor. But James was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 6 months ago." My blood went cold. 6 months ago? Michael never told me that. Patricia nodded. "Exactly. And according to James's care facility, Michael has been visiting regularly alone, trying to convince James to change the trust to exclude you entirely." She paused. "But here's what Michael doesn't know. You have medical power of attorney over James filed 2 years ago. And according to my sources, James gave you access to his financial accounts with a note that said, and I quote, 'In case Michael ever becomes irresponsible with money.'" I sat up despite the pain shooting through my skull. My mind was racing. James had seen something in his son. Something I'd been too blind to see. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. "Patricia, I need you to do something for me." 30 minutes later, I was looking at James Chen's bank statements for the past year. And there was withdrawals. Small at first. $5,000 in January. $8,000 in March. $12,000 in May. They got bigger and more frequent. Over 8 months, Michael had stolen more than $180,000 from his own father. From a man with Alzheimer's who trusted him. I traced where the money went. Rent payments for a luxury apartment downtown. Car payments for a Mercedes. Jewelry from Tiffany's. Designer clothes from Nordstrom. His mistress. I pulled up Michael's credit card statements that I still had access to. There she was. Amanda Price, 29 years old, junior associate at his firm. Dinners at expensive restaurants. Weekend trips to Napa Valley. A 3-carat diamond bracelet purchased while I was getting my MRI results. Michael had been building an entire second life, funded by stealing from his dying father and planning to take half of everything I'd worked for. The plan was perfect. Divorce me while I was vulnerable, take half my assets, wait for his father to die, inherit the trust and ride off into the sunset with Amanda. He needed me alive for the divorce to get my money legally. But I think part of him, maybe a big part, hoped I wouldn't wake up from that surgery. It would have made everything so much cleaner for him. No messy divorce. Just a grieving widower inheriting everything. I looked at Patricia and I smiled for the first time since waking up. I said, "How fast can you move on this?" He smiled back, sharp and dangerous. "How public do you want this to be?" I thought about that note. About waking up alone with divorce papers. About 12 years of lies. I said, "I want everyone to know exactly what he did. Every single person." We made a plan. But first I needed to do something Michael would never expect. I needed to stay completely silent. For 36 hours I said nothing. Didn't respond to anything. Michael started texting me. The first one said, "Sarah, I know you're upset but we need to talk." Then, "We need to discuss asset division. Be reasonable." Then, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Then finally, "You're being unreasonable by not responding. My lawyer will be in touch." He called. I'd already blocked him. He sent emails. Walked. He actually showed up at the hospital on day 2 and Rebecca was waiting. She'd been watching for him. When he tried to enter my room, she blocked the doorway, still in her scrubs, and said loud enough for the entire floor to hear, "You are not welcome here. Security has been notified. If you try to contact my patient again, I will file a restraining order and report you to every medical ethics board in the state for harassment of a post-surgical patient." Michael's face went red. "That's my wife." Rebecca stepped closer. "That's my patient. And you served her divorce papers while she was unconscious from surgery. Get out before I have you arrested." Security escorted him out while nurses and patients watched. I heard about it later. Rebecca said his face was white with rage and something else. Fear. He was starting to realize he didn't have as much control as he thought. On hour 40, I discharged myself from the hospital against medical advice. I was dizzy, in pain, still wearing bandages wrapped around my head like a turban, but I had somewhere to be. Rebecca drove me. I walked into James Chen's care facility looking like a disaster, but I didn't care. James was sitting in the sunroom doing a crossword puzzle. When he saw me, his face lit up. Sarah. Oh my God, what happened to you? I sat down next to him carefully. I had brain surgery, James. 2 days ago. His face fell. Brain surgery? Where was Michael? Why didn't he tell me? That's when I knew. Michael had been keeping us apart deliberately. I took James's hand and said, James, I need to show you something. It's about Michael and your money. Can you focus for me right now? Is your mind clear? He squeezed my hand. It's a good day. Show me. I pulled out my tablet and showed him everything. Bank statements with highlighted withdrawals. Transaction records. Photos of Amanda's luxury apartment with Michael's name on the lease. Photos of the Mercedes in her assigned parking spot. Credit card receipts. A paper trail of 8 months of systematic theft. I watched James's face as he processed it. This dignified man, a retired judge who'd spent 40 years upholding the law, realizing his only son had been robbing him while he was losing his mind to Alzheimer's. His hands started shaking. He said quietly, "My son did this? Michael did this to me." I nodded. "I'm so sorry, James." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me and his jaw was set. "What do you need from me, Sarah?" I pulled out documents I'd had Patricia prepare. "I need you to remember that you trusted me. I need you to understand what I'm about to ask you to sign. And I need you to mean it." He picked up the pen. "Tell me what to do." Within an hour, James had signed a new power of attorney giving me complete financial control over all his accounts. He signed an affidavit testifying to Michael's financial abuse and his own diagnosis of Alzheimer's, confirming he hadn't authorized any of the withdrawals. He signed a new will excluding Michael entirely. I had it notarized immediately with 3 witnesses, all staff members who'd watched Michael's suspicious behavior for months and were eager to help. James looked at me when it was done and said, "Make him pay for this, Sarah. Not just for me. For you too." I kissed his forehead. "I promise you he's about to lose everything." 2 hours later, Michael's phone rang. It was his father's bank. All accounts frozen pending investigation of elder financial abuse. He called the bank back, screaming. They calmly informed him that the primary power of attorney had initiated the freeze and they could not discuss it with him further. He called James's care facility. The receptionist told him he'd been removed from the visitor list and was no longer authorized to receive information about Mr. Chen's care or whereabouts. He tried to call me. Still blocked. He tried to call James directly. The care facility staff had been instructed not to put any calls from Michael through. And in that moment I know he finally understood. I knew everything. And I was coming for him. Patricia moved like lightning. She filed an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets, citing Michael's theft from joint accounts and fraudulent asset hiding. She submitted evidence to support it, dozens of pages. She filed elder abuse charges with the district attorney's office on James's behalf, including the affidavit and financial records. Financial abuse of a vulnerable adult is a felony carrying 2 to 4 years in prison. And she submitted a formal grievance to Michael's employer, a detailed report of his embezzlement, ethical violations and fraud. At 3 a.m, Michael's phone rang. His boss. "Michael, you're suspended effective immediately pending investigation. Don't come into the office. Don't contact clients. HR will be in touch." Just like that, his career was over. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Hour 46, I did something I never thought I'd do. I'm a private person. I don't air dirty laundry. I don't do drama. But this wasn't drama. This was truth. And everyone was going to hear it. I wrote a post and published it on every social media platform I had. To everyone who has asked about my surgery, thank you for your concern. It was successful. I'm recovering well. To my soon-to-be ex-husband, I have a message. Serving divorce papers to an unconscious woman while she's in surgery shows character. Stealing $180,000 from your elderly father with Alzheimer's shows even more. Thank you to my lawyer, my real friends, and my father-in-law James Chin, who taught me that integrity matters more than money. Some things can't be operated on. Like a rotten heart. Michael, see you in court. Bring your toothbrush. You're going to need it. I hit post and watched it spread. Within an hour it had been shared 200 times. Within 3 hours 1,000. People were tagging Michael. His colleagues. His boss. Everyone we knew was seeing it. My phone started ringing with calls from friends, from colleagues, from people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone was asking the same thing. Is it true? Did he really do that? Amanda saw it. She called Michael immediately. I know because someone recorded the screaming match in the parking lot of Michael's temporary apartment and sent it to Rebecca, who sent it to me. Amanda was yelling, "You told me you were already divorced. You said it was finalized months ago. You stole from your own father. He has Alzheimer's." Michael was trying to calm her down, trying to explain, but she was done. She texted him 10 minutes later. "We're done. Don't ever contact me again. You're disgusting." Michael's world was collapsing in real time, and I was watching it happen from my recovery bed with satisfaction humming through my veins. Hour 47 he showed up at our house. The one he'd moved out of and changed the locks on. But I wasn't there. I was staying with Rebecca, recovering. But neighbors told me later that he sat on the front porch for 2 hours, crying and drinking from a bottle. They called the police. He was escorted away. Hour 48 he found me. I don't know how. Maybe he followed Rebecca's car. Maybe someone told him. But suddenly he was pounding on Rebecca's front door, sobbing. "Sarah, please, open the door. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. The stress of your illness, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was confused. Please, Sarah, I love you." Rebecca looked at me. I nodded. She opened the door and there he was. Michael Chin, who'd always been so perfectly put together, so controlled, was a complete mess. His hair was sticking up. His eyes were red and swollen. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. He saw me standing behind Rebecca, still wearing my surgical bandages, and he pushed past her, reaching for me. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." My voice was ice. He froze. "Sarah, please just let me explain." I crossed my arms. "Explain what, Michael? Explain filing for divorce at 9 a.m. while I was having my skull opened at 6? Explain stealing $180,000 from your father who has Alzheimer's? Explain, Amanda? Explain which part exactly?" His face crumpled. I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of the medical bills. I made bad choices. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "You made bad choices? You stole from your dying father. You hid money from our marriage. You served me divorce papers while I was unconscious. You left me a note calling me worthless. Which part was the bad choice, Michael?" He grabbed for my hands. "I'll drop the divorce. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything." I pulled away. "Oh, the divorce is happening. But on my terms now. You're getting nothing except whatever the judge decides you deserve after your asset hiding and fraud. Your father has disinherited you completely. Everything goes to charity and to me. And the DA is very interested in elder financial abuse. That's a felony, Michael. 2 to 4 years in prison." His face went white. "Prison? Sarah, no, please, I'll lose everything." I stepped closer and my voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You already did. 48 hours ago you thought you'd won. You thought I'd wake up alone, weak and defeated, and you'd take everything I'd worked for and ride off with your girlfriend. Instead, you lost your wife, your father, your inheritance, your job, your girlfriend, and your freedom. I woke up from surgery and chose myself. Something you never let me do before." He was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face. "I loved you. I still love you." I shook my head slowly. "No, Michael. You loved what I could give you. You loved my salary and my stability in my father-in-law's trust fund. You loved having a successful wife you could brag about at parties. But you never loved me. And you know what? I don't think I ever really loved you either. I loved who I thought you were. We're both disappointed." I stepped back inside Rebecca's house. Michael lunged forward, but Rebecca blocked him. I looked at him one last time through the doorway. "My lawyer will contact you about the divorce proceedings and the criminal charges. Don't come back here. Don't call me. Don't text me. The only communication I want from you is through attorneys. Goodbye, Michael." For real this time. I closed the door in his face and locked it. He pounded on it for another 5 minutes, screaming my name, begging. I sat on Rebecca's couch and listened to him fall apart. Then the police came. Apparently, Rebecca had called them the moment he showed up. They took him away for trespassing and violating the restraining order Rebecca had filed on my behalf. I watched through the window as they put him in the back of the patrol car. He looked up at the window, saw me standing there, and the look on his face was pure devastation. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. Nothing. He was just gone. The legal process moved faster than anyone expected. Michael was formally charged with elder financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, James's affidavit, witness testimony from care facility staff. His lawyer tried to negotiate, but the DA's office wasn't interested. They made him an offer. Plead guilty, serve 18 months, pay full restitution plus penalties, and they wouldn't add additional charges for the divorce, fraud, and asset hiding. He took it. He had no choice. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. The judge was not sympathetic to Michael's claims. When she read about the timing of the filing and saw the note he'd left me, her face hardened. She awarded me the house, my full medical practice equity, and 70% of all other marital assets. Michael walked away with his car and his debt. That was it. Amanda Price actually testified on my behalf about Michael's lies and deception. She told the court he'd convinced her he was divorced, that I was unstable and had abandoned him. She was embarrassed and angry at being used. The judge thanked her for her honesty. Michael's firm fired him officially. His reputation in corporate finance was obliterated. Nobody would hire him. He ended up working at a Target trying to make his restitution payments to James. I heard through mutual friends that he lived in a studio apartment and took the bus to work. The Mercedes was repossessed. Amanda had moved to another city and blocked him on everything. James updated his will one final time with me sitting beside him on a good day. He looked at me and said, "A man who steals from his dying father doesn't deserve the family name or a single dollar of my money. You've been more of a child to me than he ever was." He left everything to charity and to me. Michael was explicitly excluded in writing. 6 months after my surgery, I walked back into my operating room fully healed. My hands were steady. My vision was perfect. The tumor was gone, and so was the dead weight I'd been carrying in my marriage. I performed a 7-hour cardiac bypass surgery and felt more alive than I had in years. I sold the house Michael and I had shared. I couldn't stand being there anymore. Every room held memories that now felt contaminated. I bought a smaller place in a neighborhood I'd always loved. Just for me. My choice. My space. I decorated it exactly how I wanted. Bright colors. Modern furniture. A home office where I could work. It felt like freedom. I started therapy to process the betrayal and learned about boundaries, about recognizing manipulation, about not sacrificing myself completely for people who wouldn't do the same for me. Rebecca came with me to some sessions for support. She told me once, "Watching you destroy Michael so efficiently was both terrifying and inspiring. Remind me never to cross you." I laughed. Felt good to laugh again. A year after my surgery, I got a call from James's care facility. He'd passed away peacefully in his sleep. I drove over immediately. Even though I knew it was coming, it still hurt. I sat with him for a while, holding his hand even though he was gone. The nurse told me his last words were about me. He'd said, "Tell Sarah she was the daughter I should have had. Tell her to take care of herself." I used part of my inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for women in medicine. The James Chin Memorial Scholarship. It pays full tuition for women from low-income backgrounds who want to become surgeons. James would have loved that. Michael contested the will, of course. He lost. The judge cited his criminal conviction and ruled the will was valid. I think about Michael sometimes. Not with anger anymore. That burned out a long time ago. Just with a kind of distant curiosity about how I missed the signs for so long. But I also learned something important through all of this. I'm stronger than I ever knew. When everything was stripped away, when I was at my most vulnerable with bandages wrapped around my skull and divorce papers in my hand, I didn't break. I fought back with everything I had. And I won. I still perform surgeries. I still save lives. But now I also save myself. I don't work 90-hour weeks anymore. I take vacations. I have boundaries. I date occasionally, though I'm in no rush. And I trust my instincts. When something feels wrong, I investigate instead of making excuses for people who don't deserve them. Michael thought my surgery was his opportunity. His big moment. He forgot that surgeons are trained to handle high-pressure situations, to make critical decisions under stress, and to cut away what's diseased with precision. He was the tumor I didn't know I had. The operation was a success. The patient survived. And she's thriving now. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the years I spent with Michael. I don't. They taught me what I won't tolerate. They showed me my own strength. And they proved that karma doesn't always take its time. Sometimes karma works in 48 hours. Especially when karma has a medical degree and knows exactly where to cut. I'm in the operating room right now teaching a group of residents. We're performing a complex cardiac bypass, and I'm showing them the delicate work of repairing what's broken. One of them, a young woman with steady hands, asks me how I stay so calm under pressure. I smile behind my surgical mask and think about divorce papers on a hospital nightstand. About frozen bank accounts and courtroom victories. About closing doors on men who beg for second chances they never deserved. I tell her, you learn to trust your skills, trust your preparation, and never hesitate to cut away what doesn't belong. She nods, thinking I'm talking about surgery. I am. But I'm talking about life too. Some people wait for karma. Some people wait for justice to find them. Not me. I'm a surgeon. I don't wait. I operate. And I never leave any disease behind.